Hey there, I am Pronger Faulkner, for those who don't know me, and I'm here today with Beverly Jacobson to talk about our collaboration book called Absolute Will, which was released in October 2021. Thanks for being here, Beverly.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
So the idea for this collaboration came to me early this year, actually in January, as I was still working on my first book, and I kept allowing myself to get distracted with other things on my to-do list, one of which was trying to come up with a fundraising idea for a project that my fiance Mike and I want to do in Nicaragua. And eventually the urge to create this inspirational collaboration got so strong that I knew I needed to get going on it. And I really wanted women from as many countries around the world to make this a global effort of inspiring others. And I wanted every story to have a health and willpower aspect to it. So when the idea hit me out of what seemed to be nowhere, that this collaboration would make a perfect way to fundraise, this book suddenly became my #1 priority to make it happen by the end of the year. So all of the profits from the author entry fees and the sales through the first month of our launch are going towards Mike and I building a house for a family in Nicaragua who doesn't have a home of their own. And I'm so thrilled that we have 21 authors in this book, Beverly and me and 19 other amazing women from 7 countries around the world. Our authors are from Canada, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, Australia, South Africa, and Bulgaria. And we have linked arms to share our personal, vulnerable, insightful, true stories of willpower when facing emotional and mental health crises, physical injuries, and disease. So this book is self-published and self-promoted by all of us, not done through a traditional publishing house. It's been a grassroots effort, which makes what we've done with it so far all the more incredible. My first book became a bestseller in 2 categories, so I was pretty sure that we could do it with Absolute Will, especially after tweaking some of my marketing strategies, plus the fact that we would have a built-in book launch team with all 21 of us sharing it. But what I didn't expect was that we would hit #1 bestseller in 9 categories across 3 countries, Canada, the US, and Australia, making all of us international best-selling authors. And I also didn't expect that we would hit #1 new release in 31 categories across 4 countries, Canada, the US, Australia, and the UK. And that's just been in the last few weeks since the book went live on Amazon. So the reviews so far on this book say that the stories are raw, real, thought-provoking, heartwarming, life-changing, well-written, and that this book is a fantastic read, can't put it down. The stories are truly inspiring. You feel a personal connection to each of the writer's journeys, and that this book has given so much hope to others. And these are all direct quotes from reviews on Amazon. So Beverly's chapter is called From Fear to Faith, chapter 16 in Absolute Will. Welcome, Beverly.
Thank you so much. This is an incredible opportunity. I've been interested in writing since I was a little girl and probably wrote some bad mystery stories. But as I grew up, I chose to major in English education because of my love for writing and literature, and kind of went down a different path for a while, but here we are, and jumped on board with your collaboration, and I'm so excited to be here. So
I'm so excited to have you in this book and to be here today. So can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what your chapter is about?
Of course. So I am Beverly Jacobson, and I love being Mrs. J to my students, but I married my Air Force husband almost 25 years ago and really was excited to start a teaching career. It's just been a passion of mine to teach, and was not, I mean, I wanted to be a mom at some point, but that really wasn't my focus early in our marriage. And I have another book about that, but that's a different story. But really, we did not intend to have a big family. I intended to teach right along with being a mom whenever it did happen, because that's a perfect mom job, right? You can be home when your kids are home, you can work when they're at school. And then the Lord started us on this family journey. And like I said, we didn't plan a big family, but we ended up having baby after baby after baby. And right now we have 9 children. We live in Colorado after 22 and a half years at the Air Force, moving around the world. And we have settled down here for various reasons. And some of that will be apparent. But my chapter is about our 9th and our last baby. She's actually not a baby anymore. She's closing in on her 5th birthday. And she is our miracle girl. I have her story that we ended up framing to put in her room. But my chapter focuses on the fear that came when we learned 18 weeks into my pregnancy that she has a rare condition known as Edwards syndrome or trisomy 18. And I had, like many people, had never heard of this condition before. I did experience 2 early miscarriages throughout my other childbearing experience, and those were very devastating, a learning experience all of their own, but this was unlike anything I knew how to prepare for. Based on what we were told in the beginning, we thought that our little girl was not going to make it to term. If she did make it, if she was born alive, statistics were telling us she would live 5 to 15 days. And only 5 to 10% of these babies would reach their first birthday. So you can imagine that was a very emotional journey for us. And so that ended up being the focus of my chapter. There's so much that could be shared about it, but I really felt that for me, the mental and emotional journey, which we know mental and emotional health is absolutely tied to our physical health and well-being. I learned so much through that I wanted to be able to reach out and share our story as we came through it to be able to offer hope to other people.
I just love that. And your story is so powerful because, like you said, these babies with this condition are not expected to live. Mm-hmm. And yet, your story is incredible just, based on that your little one is now, she's thriving, right? She's come so far already. And you're just such an inspiration to other parents that are going through, horrendous diagnoses with their pregnancy.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember the hope and the lifeline that we felt we kind of caught when we were about a month or 2 into the journey with the diagnosis, was in fact finding out that we weren't alone, even though we had never heard of this diagnosis before. Even though we didn't know anyone that had gone through something like this personally, we did find community online. And it never occurred to me at the time to look for a support group, but through friend of a friend, we were introduced to one. And all of a sudden, I realized that there were children, there were babies, there were children, there are some teenagers and young adults who have this condition as well. And it was your face said it all, like, really? I mean, that from what we had been told was an impossibility. And hope started rising because at first my goal was, I just want to meet my baby alive. I just want to hold her before she has to go to heaven. That right there is a really difficult place to be in as a mom, as a dad. I mean, my husband was devastated too, and both of us had to deal with grief and just the emotions of the journey in our own way. And then our children, it was, how do you help little ones know how to plan for something like this? Even our teenagers, you can't really wrap your own brain around it, let alone lead your children through this difficult path. So our faith absolutely was foundational to the decisions we made, the perspective that we brought to the situation, because we knew that Verity, science would say that there's, a mutation, there's a mistake in her genetic code. Well, okay, scientifically you can say that, but we don't believe that God makes any mistakes. And we knew that there was purpose for her being created the way that she was. Her little clubbed feet had purpose, her little clenched hands, even the holes in her heart and the other imperfections that a doctor or a clinically minded person might look at that and say, oh, this is what's wrong with the baby. We understood that. And we went into our appointment saying, we're not denying reality. We're realistic about this. but we have hope, and we want to give her every opportunity to let us see what she can do and write her own story. So our faith was so foundational to that. But I will say, I mean, I've gone through challenges. I've lost a couple of babies. I've had my husband in war zones for deployments. We've struggled. You know, our marriage took a toll through this whole journey. Teenagers have struggled. Parenting is hard. You know, life is hard. But if you don't have a foundation of faith, it makes a big difference. And for us to be able to hold on to something that there is eternal purpose, and we can learn and grow individually and as a family, and eventually get to the point where, Lord willing, we can pour into others and offer hope and faith over fear. That was something that I don't know that happened consciously, but through the journey and looking back, of course, we can see how far we've come. So thank the Lord for all of that. His faithfulness really brought us through.
That's amazing. So when you first found out about this collaboration, what made you decide to jump in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I still remember seeing your post, and I'm not sure which group, because we're in a couple of overlapping groups, but I remember seeing it, and you were looking specifically, you had said, for people who had overcome physical diagnoses, I think was the actual term. And I like to help people make connections and collaboration. So collaboration, the word itself, is something that's on my heart. With the nonprofit that we recently started this year, when I was writing out our core principles, collaboration and connection were two words that came out, because I feel that, you know, together we're more. I mean, it's a little bit of a sports cliche, right? There's no I in team, but that we can reach more people when we work together as opposed to competition. And so I saw that, and initially was trying to think of who I could connect you with, because I have people in my community that, you know, would definitely be able to say, oh yes, I overcame a diagnosis. And then I started thinking, well, diagnosis, that's our whole thing. In fact, my one of the outpourings of our journey is I had been leading a group that I've named From Diagnosis to Delivery. And it's for mamas who have received a prenatal diagnosis, to walk them through this difficult journey. And so that word also resonated with me. And I said, well, just out of curiosity, what do you think about this situation? And I just put a little blurb about what we had gone through with Verity. And you responded and said, wow, that actually makes me think about, you know, broadening the scope of this project. And maybe there are other stories that we could bring into this. So then you and I started dialoguing about it. I looked at your site and what you were doing with it. And it gave me excitement at the thought that I could bring a story that would be maybe different than someone writing in first person about my own diagnosis. I could say, well, this is a journey we've been through with our daughter, and this is what it looked like for us. And so kind of the rest is history, I guess.
I just love that. And I do remember the day that we started talking through Facebook Messenger, and just, you know, going back and forth. And you told me, you know, your story, a little bit about it, and about Verity. And I remember thinking, like, I really had not considered broadening it like that. And that was just such a cool moment for me, because I thought, here, this is a very unique perspective, you know, being the mother of someone with a diagnosis. And yet you also, as you've said, you know, you've been through your own emotional journey through all of this. So it basically kind of like, you know, merged those things and fit so beautifully in this book. I'm so thrilled to have your story in it. And I'm so glad that we started that dialogue, and that you did reach out, and that you didn't just scroll on by, as some people can on, you know, when they see posts like this.
Well, it speaks to the power of collaboration and how ideas can snowball. And when more people get involved, it can broaden that circle, and definitely the reach. I mean, if I had set out to, and I have written a couple of books myself, but look at the scope, you know, with 21 authors, like you said, just the reach that we've been able to have together. And I think there were a few of us connected in different ways, but of course, all 21 of us didn't know each other before this journey started. So that has been really amazing as well, to make those connections personally within our group and cheer each other on as we've been going through the journey of writing and polishing and editing and getting it all together. It's just been really a blessing and a growing experience for sure.
I agree. Yeah, a growing experience for me as well. And I feel like we're a little family now. You know, it just like
Yes.
we've done this incredible, we've created this incredible being together, this book.
Yes. I know, it's amazing. I mean, look at all these names. It's really, really incredible. Yeah, it's something to see your name on a book and to be able to know that you've touched lives in such a profound way.
Absolutely. And to be getting the feedback that we're getting is just,
Mhm.
it feels like we did a great thing and that we've really accomplished what we set out to do with wanting to inspire, right? That's what we all
Yes.
came, to this to do.
Yes.
So writing brings out different experiences for different people.
Mhm.
And you have so much experience already with writing as well as editing. How was the actual writing process of this chapter for you, telling your
Mhm.
journey? And did anything surprise you along the way of writing your chapter?
It was, yes. I started blogging when I got the diagnosis with Verity, which I had done some blogging before, but I set up a blog specific to the journey because it was just easier to keep people in the loop with all the medical updates we were getting. And it also became a place to pour out and a place where I was already raw and vulnerable in allowing people into those emotions. And one of the scariest things for me was facing my own fears and even selfishness in a way when I started to realize Verity is maybe instead of preparing for her to die, maybe I need to prepare to be her mom and like bring her home and watch her live. And that sound, when I put those words to paper, it was so emotional because I thought, what kind of a person am I that it would be easier in a sense to bury my child than to bring her home and into an already full household with 8 other kids that I already felt stretched thin. But the process of discovering that was healing and freeing, because when I admitted it, I found people that said, you know what, you're not alone in those feelings and it's hard, but day by day, you're going to have what you need. And so that led to my first grown-up book, Unplanning Our Parenthood. And when I thought I'm going to do this collaboration, I thought, I've written so much already. I can pull, I can pull from the blog, I can pull from this book, and it's going to be easy. Haha, right? I was already working on the other release that's from diagnosis to delivery that comes with, that's what I wanted to pour into the moms that are in my group. Like if I could have been given a book, what would I have wanted to read? And that was that book. That also was a labor of love. I thought this is going to be easy. I've been through it, right? It was so emotional. I think the surprising thing was how difficult one chapter is, because in a book, I can set up, I can build my whole story in my story, for example, about the journey of our family, in a sort of how-to book, which the From Diagnosis to Delivery book is almost a how-to, like how to navigate your pregnancy and get ready for a delivery that you don't know what it's going to look like for your baby, for your family, you don't know what that ending, so to speak, is going to be. That was a different purpose and a different way to get there. And so when I had just one chapter in our collaboration, I found it was a lot more difficult. Where do you begin? Where do you begin to tell a story such as this? And that's some of your prompts and ideas of kind of helping us think through things led. I don't remember specifically what it was, but there was an aha moment when I realized, okay, the turning point for me was that moment that I was sitting across from a doctor and hearing some really hurtful words. And that's how my chapter opens. So I won't spoil it if anyone hasn't read it yet, but it was stunning to me, the unprofessional language that I was hearing from someone who was the head of this medical department. And even though that was a difficult experience, that it was a pivotal moment, because I was able to realize that mama bear instinct was rising up in me, that you can't talk about my baby that way. And we don't know what's going to happen with her, but I'm going to give her every chance possible. And that's where we started. That's where we started the chapter. And from there, I hope that it's something that not only shares our story, but can give a little bit of a process to get from the really difficult part or the fearful part of your journey, whatever it might be, because not everyone's going to go through this particular experience. That's the beauty of this collaboration, is that you see your own journey mirrored in different ways throughout the stories that are woven through the whole book. So that's, yeah, it was surprisingly difficult when you think about, oh, it's only 2,000 words, and yet to really fine tune it and zero in on what's one message from my story that I would want the reader to take away that could empower her or him to really, have something to latch onto and make a difference in their lives.
I love that. And you're right that, people can read your story and read, the other stories in the book as well. And you can, if you kind of have an open mind about it, you can actually attach some of your own personal experiences to these stories.
Yes.
I mean, I don't have any biological children of my own, and yet I still resonated with your story and your message, because you are about basically like, let's just do what we can and make the best of what we've, been given. And I mean, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And your story is so moving. So I'm thrilled to have you in this, as difficult it is to read your chapter and to really try and understand what you've gone through based on your 2,000 words. You did such a good job with writing it. And like, Thank you. I just love it. It's so inspiring and so powerful. Yeah. So I know that like you've already talked about some of the books that you've got already that you've published, which is amazing. And now this collaboration. So do you think that you're going to just keep on writing books or offer future editing services? Because I want to let everyone know too that Beverly was a key, she was a key, player in the editing process for this book. Are you going to keep doing that too?
That's my inner grammar nerd coming out. That yes, when Joe asked, are there, if you're willing to be a beta reader, proofreader, I was like, okay, I should do this. I mean, if my chapter is going to be in there, I want this to be a really good book. And not everybody is, knows where the commas go or why they should go there. And that's one of my strong points. So I made time for that weekend that we were really digging in before it went to the professional editor. But it is something that I'm pretty good at. And I may freelance that for sure. I'm not sure how Joe and I have talked. Okay, spoiler alert. We have talked about collaborating, working together on some future projects as well. But I did, even before the proofreading thing came out, I don't remember at what point in our messaging back and forth this came out, but I had picked her brain a little bit about collaborations, because as I was writing my chapter and then serving my community, which we launched a nonprofit this year. Verity's Village is official. It's been a dream that's been on our hearts since Verity was itty bitty and we were drowning in difficulty, to be honest. I mean, it was a really hard year and a half or so after she was born. It was like, on one hand, we made it, she's alive, she's thriving, and life should be good, right? But it was also really, really hard. And so during that time, I thought, if we ever get through this difficult part, I want to help other families, because nobody really knows what we're going through. Even the ones that were closest to us didn't know. They wanted to help, but they didn't necessarily know how. And I didn't know how to ask for it. I didn't know how to say, I am drowning, basically. And so starting that nonprofit was a big thing for us and really exciting. So I have this community that we are serving, and it's parents who receive any kind of a life-limiting diagnosis, not necessarily trisomy 18, which was the journey we walked, but there's a lot of similarities if you've been given a diagnosis of any kind and you don't know whether your child's going to make it to birth or not. So I thought, what an amazing thing it would be to do a collaboration like this but with more specificity. So maybe we take trisomy 18 families and let them have a chapter to share their journey. Maybe we talk about, you know, congenital diaphragmatic hernias and what that looks like when baby's born. There are so many ideas rattling around in my brain that we can do, and you have forged the path as far as like this worked, and you learned, you know, there were some things that maybe you tweaked along the way, but from where I stand as a contributor, it worked really well to bring people on board. You gave us, you know, here's what we're going to do. Here's what you can expect from me. Here's what I expect from you. All very good things. And I think that I don't know that I would have thought of that idea if I hadn't been part of this project. And so I see the work that you put in and the time and effort too. So I'm not going to jump right into it. I am looking at, you know, growing our nonprofit, bringing awareness, doing some speaking, conferences, workshops, seminars, that kind of thing. So that's on my plate, my goal for 2022. But as a writer and as an idea spinner, there's always something going on in my head of what's going to go on next. And I usually have several projects going at the same time. So I can definitely see getting a collaboration in motion while I'm working on some other things. As I know you were as well, because you're a busy lady yourself too. So definitely you planted some seeds in my heart that will resonate in our community, Lord willing, and bring stories of hope and encouragement and blessing to others as well.
Oh, I love that. I just love the ripple effect that stuff like this can bring,
yes,
you know, and
yes, absolutely.
I mean, what a great way to bring more awareness to what you're doing with Verity's Village is to
right.
maybe, you know, have the families that are already involved in that be the ones that are in the collaboration. So yeah,
exactly.
that would be super cool. So what is your top piece of advice for someone who might be thinking that they want to become a published author?
I would say, first of all, if it's a dream in your heart, don't talk yourself out of it. Don't allow anyone or any circumstance to squash it. Like I said from the very beginning, I always wanted to be a published author from the time I was a little girl, because I have loved books and I lived at the library growing up. I had stacks of books, and my kids today, I mean, I'm a homeschool mom, so we have books everywhere. And the power of it, and being able to, you mentioned it earlier, being able to read someone else's experience that is completely different from yours, and maybe something you will never go through, and yet you learn and you take away so much from that, and you become a better person because you realize it's not just all about me and my little bubble and my perspective. You start to understand other people's perspectives and what makes them tick. And I think that there is so much value in that. So as a reader, I always wanted to be a writer. So if you want to be a writer, I encourage you to read lots of different things, lots of different perspectives. One thing I have noticed with my own children, now that I've graduated too, that I have homeschooled, they are good writers because I made them be readers. They had to read good literature, and I may not have been able to do as many grammar lessons as I wanted to, just because we have a big family. And I really wanted to drill down and say, well, I want you to know why a conjunction needs a comma when it separates two independent clauses. And they may not be able to tell you all of the rules, but they're naturally good writers because they've seen good writing. So I think being a good reader is a good piece of advice that I can pass on to you, to just read. But then also, so here's the other side of that coin, don't let that stop you. If you feel that, oh, but I don't know where to put my commas, or I'm not sure about my sentence structure, don't let that stop you, because editors can do amazing things. And there are a lot of books that some people just tell their story, and they have someone that they hire that comes along and makes their story great, like takes out all of the those kinds of things, puts the punctuation where it needs to be. And then when you read it in the written form, it's the author's story, but yet he or she has had help in presenting it. So two sides of the same coin there, that you can when you recognize good writing, you can become a good writer. So read good books, but then don't let that stop you either, because you don't have to be a perfect writer to be a writer, if that makes sense.
I love
So I
that.
hope
That
that,
is such great advice. Absolutely. So I'm surprised that I've managed to get through this without totally like tearing up. I've been kind of like choking back the tears because parts of your story are just so emotional. What else are you up to and what's next for you?
Yeah, I mentioned Verity's Village, and we are, it was almost exactly a year ago that I set up that support group from diagnosis to delivery. And even at that time, I would not have been able to say, oh, a year from now, we're going to have a fully launched nonprofit. I had no idea. I knew it was coming down the road, but I was able to, I've done various trainings, and we were given a generous $10,000 grant to incorporate and to launch our nonprofit. So one of my dreams is that Verity's Village will someday be a physical location to provide conferences and retreats and vacation opportunities for families with special needs children. But right now, the community is that I just need to pour into these women and men. I feel that I would love to bring my husband along to say the dads need some support as well. So I know that we need to grow from a staffing perspective to be able to really give some individual attention to the families, more of a mentorship one-on-one, as opposed to a group support, which is helpful. You know, you've been part of groups where that interaction, being able to connect with others that are on a similar path as you, that is powerful. But Verity's Village needs to go, beyond where we're at now to be able to provide better support. So part of that involves, Lord willing, speaking opportunities, getting in front of groups to share what our mission is, how people can help. As I've mentioned, we didn't know how to ask for help, so I think a lot of churches and community groups, if they just had a little bit of training, if they had the opportunity to hear someone's story about what this looks like, they could say, oh, this is how we could implement a ministry here, locally to help these kinds of families. So speaking engagements and probably more writing, a lot of communication, because a lot of this is about bringing awareness to not just families, but also the medical community, also just the community at large, that these diagnoses don't necessarily mean that babies aren't going to make it. On the other hand, there is awareness that needs to be brought to the forefront for those families that do suffer loss, because it is a sad fact. The statistics are there for a reason. I try to let our families know, I can't promise you that you're going to have the same experience that we've had with Verity. Like, more and more, I realize she truly is a miracle girl. There's a reason that they say these babies just don't usually make it. I don't understand why we've been gifted with this much time with her, but it is a gift, and we don't take it for granted. Every day she's with us, we love on her, and we thank the Lord that we get to be her family and love her and bring her joy where she's at. And she's taught us so much, gosh, that's a whole other book there. Just that she has taught so many people without ever saying a word herself. And I just want to tell the world what a blessing that she is, and that there's hope for this journey. So whatever that looks like, wherever I land, I know that speaking is a big part of that, more writing and taking Verity's Village to higher levels of service.
That's amazing. And I like that you touched on the medical community as well, because as your chapter starts out, like you said, the doctors, some of them have just, they're prepared to, end the pregnancy right then and there, because that's what they believe is I don't know, call it the right thing, or the logical thing, or whatever word they want to use. But I mean, you are able to prove them wrong. Right.
And I know that's a politically charged topic. We are passionately pro-life, and this journey definitely more so, and yet there's such compassion for the women that feel that they don't have any other option than to abort. I don't believe it's right, but I've been there. I put myself in their mental and emotional shoes, and my heart just goes out to them. And it is often like they just wouldn't understand that there are other options, because those other options are never presented to them. And we have learned through our research that if families are provided with this kind of support, simply walking alongside them through the pregnancy and saying, yeah, this sucks. We know this diagnosis is hard and we don't know what's on the other side, but we're going to walk you through it. We're going to help you. Ask questions of your medical team and know what level of support they're willing to give you. Sometimes we've had to help make connections. So families will literally transfer hospitals because they don't feel that they're getting supported by the medical community where they're at. So those are some of the tasks that we address. We need to offer the support and empower them to make their own decisions as a family for the health of their baby. And sometimes that involves changing a medical team, or even we've had some families that have driven hours to deliver their baby at a completely different hospital because they were told that there would not be interventions given to their child simply because of the diagnosis. And if they didn't have that diagnosis, the irony is they would get them. They would treat that child like any other child. This baby isn't breathing, we need to intubate, or we need to, oxygen or CPAP or whatever. But if you go into it with a prenatal diagnosis, sometimes that automatically will cause discrimination from the medical side of things. And that's something I had no idea existed. And that is here in the United States. It's in other countries as well, as we have served families around the world. We have learned the same thing, that sometimes getting that prenatal diagnosis is actually a drawback and prevents them from getting the care that their babies would need. So my big dream, like huge dream, would be to travel to those countries and be able to present and say, hey, here are statistics that show interventions for these babies create amazing quality of life and opportunity and serve the families in a way that I'm sorry, but sending them to the abortion clinic, it doesn't serve them. It leaves a hole in their hearts when there's that lingering what if. So a lot of parents just don't get the other side of the story. So that's why we exist.
Wow, so powerful, and such an important thing that you're doing for not just, your community that you're building now, but the whole world. Like you said, if you're planning on taking this to all the different countries and really spreading your message. And wow, I love that we were able in this book to just have like a tiny smidgen of it.
Yes. It would be such a dream to be able to set up a little office in different locations, and even just local support, even if it's not a conference center or hotel, kind of like we're envisioning someday here in Colorado, but for them to have these books and books like Absolute Will too, to say, read about the journey from others, because I know one of the cool things about being a proofreader was getting to read the chapters ahead of time. And then the one, I think I told you, but the one chapter was from a woman who was that baby. She was the baby basically that was given a diagnosis, and her mom was told, yeah, this child is, I don't want to spoil that chapter either, but that was a pretty cool connection as well that came out of this collaboration. So
absolutely. And yeah, some of the stories really do link into each other, even though we didn't know each other coming into this.
Right.
So, another
Divine
really
providence.
cool. Yeah.
Right.
Oh goodness. All right. So if you have enjoyed getting to know more about Beverly and want to connect with her, you can do that through her website, beverlyjacobson.com, as well as through veritiesvillage.com.
Yes.
Beverly, thank you so much for being in this collaboration and for your time today. I am so honored that you chose to share your and Verity's story in Absolute Will.
Thank you so much again for the opportunity. It has been an amazing ride.
You are so welcome. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.